Hello, MrTieDye here. Today I'm going to do a tapestry of the Golden Merkaba. So this is a design that I've been thinking on for a while, and I think it's time to get another video out there. It's been a while. So first off, I'm starting with a tapestry. It's been soaked in soda ash. I've spun it out so that it's barely damp, and then I folded it in half. This here is the folded edge here. The other two are the sides. So, and then I fold it in a quarter just so that I could find the exact middle. So that's what I've marked right here, is the middle of the tapestry. So what I'm going to do to start with on the Merkaba, is I'm going to fold this. I fold it in half, and now I'm going to fold it into thirds. So I guess technically it's into sixths. So what I need is a 60-degree angle, so I have a triangle. The other thing you can use is a handy dandy protractor. Set that for 60, and you're just marking from the middle of the tapestry there. So this is just going to be one of my fold lines. So we'll line that up. I got this nice and even across the bottom. So now I know that's 60 degrees going up the side there. So now I can take my yardstick and extend that line out all the way across the tapestry. Okay. So now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this side, this corner here, under, and then I'll fold the other one over top. And a couple ways you can do that. You can either just grab the line right there, kind of top and bottom, and pick it up and flip it under. But the other thing that you can do, and I find this handy, especially on t-shirts when I'm centering t-shirts or something, you can use your yardstick. So you can slide that under there and stand it up on the edge right underneath your line. And then you can go along and straighten everything out. Make sure you have that nice and lined up. Then you can pick that up. Make sure everything still stays nice and even. So I have my line right on the top. And then I can just slowly lay that down. And pull that over. Okay. Oh, must have hung up on something. Anyway, so there's my first fold. And I can use the yardstick. If there's any creases in there, I can run that right along in the edge there. So there's that first fold, and now we're going to take the other. So remember, I have my center spot right here, so I'm going to hold that and then pick up this other edge, and I'm just going to line this up right along the same edge here. And then I'll know that this here is folded into thirds. And then I just want to make sure that everything is laying flat. So I open up the different layers and make sure that everything is laying nice and flat in there. So now what I have is two folds. I have a thick fold and a thin fold here, and I have a thick fold and a thin fold. So you're going to take one of your sides here, and first off you have to decide how big you want your Merkaba to be. So I think I'm going to have mine at 36 inches, so half of that is 18 inches. So since this here is folded in half, this here is going to extend, so I'm going to measure out just 18 inches for the end of my Merkaba. And then I'm going to measure out half of that distance, so 9 inches. So I made a mark at 18 and I made a mark at 9. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take another kind of straight edge here that's got a nice corner on the bottom here, so that I can do a 90-degree line going up. So off of one of the sides, I'm going all the way up right at the middle spot, the 9-inch mark here. Okay. Now from there, doing the Merkaba, what I'm doing is showing you all of the different points, or we're folding all of the different points in there. And those points are 60 degrees wide, so half of that point is 30 degrees. So I have a 30-degree marker here. So I'm going to go from that line, and I'm going to take it right up to here. So this is the center line that I drew. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to scoot this down, and I'm going to go from that center line, and I line this up nice and straight here so that I have another 30 degrees. Once again, if you don't have an angle like this here, you can use a protractor, and you just set that for 30 degrees. Line up your protractor right in the middle there, and you'll have the same angle there. So these are the lines that we're going to be folding. And then the other line that we need to make sure to mark on there to fold is this center line. So what I usually do is just go along with my washable marker and just kind of make a dotted line. And that just reminds me that this here line is getting folded and dyed also. Okay. So now that we have all of our lines on here, what I'm going to do to start with, hold on just a second. Okay, I'm back. So I forgot my gloves, and then the other thing is I wanted to mark the lines on the other side, because some of the folds we're doing, they're not going to line up nice and perfect. So after it's folded, you're going to want to be able to see where your lines are. So make sure you mark the same exact lines. So basically, I measured out 18 inches. This here's 9 inches. 30-degree angle, 30-degree angle. And then on the back side, same thing. This here is at the 9 inches. And then your two 30-degree angles. So you're just doing the same exact lines. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start folding these. So, and then the other thing, I did draw the little dotted line. This one here, we're not going to actually fold it, but we do need to dye it. So that's why I like to mark it, just so I remember. So the first one I'm going to fold, just do an accordion fold, and I'm just lining the creases up right here, nice and straight on top. Alright, and I use there's our first line, and like I say, so now I can see that other line is on the back side right under the string there. So now we're going to fold this top line, this middle line going up. So I can just barely see right here in this crease where that line starts. So this first one is just a little bit tight in here because of the other creases. You just have to kind of make it work. But once you get a couple of them folded, then you're away from that line. And then you're just going to do the accordion fold all the way up. And the other thing, as I'm working, I try to make sure that I keep my layers all together here. If you get your layers pulled out sideways, then you can end up having part of your design not lined up correctly. So you'll have a point that's sticking off to the side or isn't as large as the others. So as I'm working, I just make sure that I'm keeping all of my creases, all my folds and layers together. So as I fold up past this other line here, because this other line touches right here in the center, you want to kind of make sure that that crease where it touches is fairly close to the top. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. So this here is where this other line goes in. I want to be able to see that because we're going to tie this one off and we're going to leave this string attached right here in the middle so that we can fold this one up and tie it up. And you'll see that in just a second here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, as I tie this knot, I'm going to tie the knot right over the middle right here. And that'll just make tying the next last line easier. Okay, so we're going to leave that attached. And then I'm going to use my cuticle pusher to kind of start this next fold. So basically what I'm going to do is stick my fingers underneath and support underneath here, and then I'm going to push this crease down in there to create the first accordion fold right there at this line. And now holding that in place, I can use my fingers to push up the edge and get the next one started. So this here is probably one of the most difficult parts of this design, is just getting these folds lined up where all of the triangles match up in the same area. And this is another reason to have the lines drawn on the other side so that you can see them when you're doing your die job. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold that crease up there. And you just have to kind of work your fabric around, because there is a lot of layers tucked into this little area here. So we're done with that, I think. I can get the rest of these folds. And once again, you want to make sure that you don't lose any of your layers right here as you're folding. You should have a thick layer and a thin layer, and you don't want to lose those. So you just keep working these creases the best you can. And then once you get that last one, then we have our string ready to tie this off. So I can run that straight down the middle and then up over the edge. I'm going to run it down the middle, and then I'm going to run it up between the other two. So I ran it this way, and then I ran it this way in between, and that just kind of helps lock that bit of the tapestry in place there, having the two lines going up and the middle one coming down there. So now that I have that, I'm going to wrap around one more time each direction. And then we'll tie that off. Okay, so now what we're going to do is kind of scrunch and fold the rest of this up, tie this up, and we want to make sure that we have access to this line here. You can see how this line that we need to die goes up and around here and then down into this crease and then all the way up here. So we're going to want to make sure we have access. So as I scrunch this up, I'm going to put all of those edges on the outside so we remember to dye them. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, we're back. So like I say, what I'm going to do is scrunch the rest of this up. And so what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to tie this here, because you can see as I tie this, that opens this area up, and that'll give us better access to these edges that we need to dye. So I'm just going to kind of turn those out, once again making sure that the layers are lined up. These are the two edges that we have, one thick and one thin. So I'm just turning all those edges out. So I'm going to start by tying this up. And now what I'm going to do is scrunch this just a little bit, just so that I can tie that and have that whole edge, outer edge, available for dyeing. In fact, I could even accordion fold this just a little bit since it's so loose. And that'll make that edge a little easier to dye. Okay, so it won't go all the way, but it went most of the way. So I'm going to bring my string around. And tie that up a little bit. And then this other one, like I say, it wraps around this whole outer edge here. So it's just going to be a matter of making sure you have access to those edges. So I made sure to leave myself a gap in here so that I can get to those edges. Now I'm just going to scrunch up the rest of this. And start tying it up. Nice thing about kite string that I like is that you can scrunch part of it and tie it up, and then scrunch some more and tie more of it up. I don't have to have everything all scrunched before I start tying things. And I do have a video, kite string or sinew, where it shows how to use both of them most efficiently, or the way that I use them efficiently. You can find your own ways of what works efficiently for you, but if this video helps you, then go for it. Okay, so there is the Merkaba. So once again, our color lines that we're going to color on. We've got this one here. This was the center line that I drew up there. And this here is one of my angled lines. That's my other angled line. And then I'm going to go along this whole edge. I drew a little dotted line on that just so that I wouldn't get confused between it and some of my other lines that I was drawing. So there we go. We'll come back and we'll get this dyed. Okay, we're back. I went ahead and let this sit and dry for a while. It's not all the way dry. It's still just got the slightest bit of moisture in it, but with the number of layers that we have in here, I like to let things sit and dry for a while. But I also want to get this video done today, so we're just going to go for it. But if you do let it sit and dry all the way, and when you go to put your dyes on, if the dye wants to roll off rather than soak in, then you can take a bottle of soda ash and just lightly mist the top and bottom, and that will help break the surface tension of the fabric and allow the dye to soak in. And I have this thick black dye, and I'm going to go along, and because it's thick, it doesn't like to soak in as much as regular dye does. So if you are using the thick black dye, you're also going to want to use a cuticle pusher or something to poke this dye down inside. So to start with, I'm just going to outline, draw over all my lines here, and then remember we also have to go around these two edges here, or around this whole edge, and then just up into the point on this side here. But I'm going to do these other ones first and get that pressed in. So if I'm pressing something in, what I'm basically doing is I put the dye on there, and then I just push, and that just helps the layers underneath there soak some of that dye up. Takes a little more time this way, but it does get you a nice thin line. I guess we can zoom in a little bit so you can see better what I'm doing. We're just going to do the other side now, the same thing. Just coat right along that line. Okay, now this is the other edge. This one here goes all the way around the edge. And this is a good idea. That's why I put the dotted line on there, just so I can remember which lines, because I had another line where I drew my 60-degree angle to start with, and that's still on here. So you need to really make sure you know which lines you're coloring. So that's the reason why you draw a dotted line on the edge there. And this does get just a little bit messy as you're trying to get this outer edge, because it's not gathered up in any fashion. So as you're dyeing, just make sure that you don't slop too much dye around. I mean, it happens. I can see little bits and pieces where I've already stained this, but I try to keep a rag handy to get the little spots off my hand before I smear them around too much on the tapestry. But this is tie-dye and those things happen, so we just try to lessen them where we can. I get the edge done, then what I'll do is I'll go back over my other lines just a little bit, because there's several layers that you got to get down through on this. So I'll usually coat it more than once. So we'll put this coat on, press it in, and then I'm going to dye the Merkaba. I'm going to do it in gold colors, and then the rest of the tapestry I'm going to do in greens. Okay. We're getting close to being done here. I could see my green kind of spreading up into my yellow some. So I knew I had plenty of green in there. So I use a couple rags to soak some of that excess up so that while this is batching, that dye doesn't want to migrate up into this other area. The other thing you can do is to resaturate some of your others, because the liquid is going to want to go to the driest spots. So if this part of your design is drier than that part, then the liquid is going to want to flow this way. And not that you want to completely drown your design, but adding just a little bit more dye, if it's a basic thing like this here where it's all one color in there, I can add a little bit more dye to that just to make sure that this doesn't want to migrate this way. And then I can add just a little bit more liquid to this. And then we're going to call that good. So there is the Golden Merkaba. And I'm going to let this batch for 48 hours and then we'll open it up and see what we have. Thank you for watching my videos. Please like and share. And I'll try to get back to doing some more of these soon. Thank you.